It was one of those evenings where the air felt heavy with trouble. A quiet Brooklyn street bathed in the orange glow of fading sunlight, shadows stretching long and thin like fingers reaching for something just out of grasp. Mrs. Evelyn Carter, 72 years young with silver curls framing a face etched by decades of laughter and resilience, shuffled home from the grocery store, her arms weighed down by bags of fresh collards and sweet potatoes. At her side trotted Duke, a hulking German shepherd with a graying muzzle and eyes that missed nothing. To most, he was just a sweet old dog. But Duke had secrets, the kind that stayed coiled in his muscles, ready to snap. 3 blocks away, Jamal Thompson, a lanky 16-year-old with a faded Superman backpack slung over one shoulder, gripped the subway pole as the 6 train rattled toward the Bronx. His headphones buzzed with Kendrick Lamar, but his eyes kept darting to the pregnant woman, standing near the doors, pale, sweating, one hand bracing her lower back. She looked about to collapse. Jamal had been on his feet since his shift at the bodega, but without a second thought, he tugged his headphones down. "Ma'am," he said, nodding to his seat. Her relieved smile cracked something open in him, a quiet pride he hadn't felt in months. Back on that Brooklyn sidewalk, the trouble arrived like a thunderclap. 2 men in hoodies materialized from an alley, their voices sharp, demanding Evelyn's purse. She froze, her heart a wild drum in her chest. But Duke didn't freeze. A low, primal growl rolled from his throat, a sound that didn't belong to a pet. It was the growl of a creature who'd once worn a badge. The men laughed, oblivious, until Duke moved. Not the clumsy lurch of an aging dog, but the calculated strike of an animal trained to disarm, to pin, to protect. One man hit the pavement. Before he could blink, Duke's teeth a hair's breadth from his throat. The other stumbled back, cursing, fumbling for something in his pocket. Meanwhile, on the subway, the woman's trembling fingers pressed a folded note into Jamal's palm. "Read it when you get home," she whispered, her voice urgent, almost fearful. He frowned, turning the paper over. No name, just a smudged lipstick stain. The train screeched to a stop and she vanished into the crowd, leaving Jamal clutching the note like a live wire. He hesitated, then peeled it open. His breath caught. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's rewind, because in that exact moment under the Brooklyn twilight, the second attacker's hand emerged from his pocket, glinting steel. Evelyn's scream lodged in her throat as Duke lunged. And Jamal? He stood in the shuddering subway car, staring at the note, the words blurring as his eyes filled. "You don't know me," it began, "but you just saved my life. Some stories collide like destiny, others unravel like a fuse, spark by spark. But both of these? They're just beginning, and neither will end the way you think. Mrs. Evelyn." Carter's scream never made it past her lips. The glint of the knife froze her, but Duke didn't flinch. His training, those years pacing beside Officer Ramirez, chasing down perps in Queens, taking bullets and badges in stride, flooded back. In an instant, the blade slashed downward, but Duke twisted, his body a battering ram knocking the man's wrist sideways. The knife clattered to the pavement as the attacker howled, clutching his hand. The other thug, still pinned beneath Duke's paws, whimpered, "Call him off, lady, please." But Evelyn wasn't listening. Her eyes darted to the rusted fire, escape above them. A shadow moved. A neighbor? A friend? She couldn't tell. Her voice finally broke free. "Duke, hold!" The command cracked like a whip. Duke's jaws hovered, trembling over the man's throat. Evelyn's hands shook as she fumbled for her phone. Think. But the 911 call would have to wait. Across the street, a curtain twitched in old Mr. Nguyen's apartment. She'd helped him carry groceries last winter when his arthritis flared. Would he help now? Or stay hidden, like everyone else these past few years since the neighborhood started changing? Her finger hovered over the emergency button. Then, a crash, a trash can toppling, footsteps. Her head snapped up. Were there more of them? Jamal's palm slicked the note as the subway doors hissed shut behind the woman. He blinked at her words. "You don't know me, but you just saved my life. They're watching. Take this, and don't tell anyone." Below, a phone number, scrawled in shaky cursive. His stomach dropped. They're watching. The train lurched and he gripped the pole, scanning the car. An elderly man dozed in the corner. A teen girl scrolled TikTok, oblivious. No one seemed to care about him, but his skin prickled. Was this a prank? The woman's pale, desperate face flashed in his mind. She'd looked hunted. He shoved the note into his pocket, his mind racing. Mom's voice echoed, "Keep your head down, Jamal. Don't get involved." But what if this was real? At his stop, he bolted up the stairs, the note burning against his thigh. His neighborhood buzzed with familiar chaos. Kids dribbling a ball by the bodega. Mrs. Ruiz yelling in Spanish at her chihuahua. Normal. Safe. Yet, as he ducked into his building's stairwell, he swore a black sedan idled too long at the curb. Upstairs, his little sister Keisha blasted Beyoncé while braiding her hair. "You good?" she asked, eyeing his sweat-damp shirt. "Yeah," he lied. In the bathroom, he locked the door and dialed the number. One ring. Two. A voice, garbled and mechanized, answered, "If you want answers, meet me at the diner on Flatbush tomorrow. 7 a.m., come alone." The line went dead. Back in Brooklyn, the would-be thieves weren't talking. Not with Duke's teeth grazing the taller one's atoms are. Apple. "Who sent you?" Evelyn demanded, her voice steadier now. She'd survived the '68 riots, raised 3 sons alone after her husband's heart gave out. Fear wasn't in her vocabulary, but suspicion was. These boys didn't smell like regular street thugs. Too clean, too nervous. The one on the ground stammered, "We just wanted cash, swear." But Duke's ears pricked a second before Evelyn heard it. A low, rhythmic thud from the alley. Boots. Heavy, deliberate. Someone else was coming. Duke's growl deepened. A warning rumble that made Evelyn's bones vibrate. She backed toward the stoop, her phone finally dialing 911. "Send police to 158th and—" A garbage truck roared by, drowning her out. The dispatcher's voice fizzed. "Repeat that address?" Too late. The footsteps halted. A figure emerged from the alley, tall, broad-shouldered, face obscured by a hood. Not running, not hiding, just watching. Evelyn's breath hitched. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mugging. The man tilted his head, studying Duke like a puzzle. Then slowly, he raised a hand, not with a weapon, but a phone. A camera? The flash blinked once, twice. Click. Duke lunged, but the man melted, back into the shadows, his laughter trailing behind him. "Next time, Grandma," he called, "your dog won't be enough." Jamal didn't sleep. The black sedan was gone when he checked at 3 a.m., but the note stayed folded under his pillow. At 6:30 a.m., he hovered outside the diner, its neon sign buzzing. The place was nearly empty, a truck nurse sipping coffee, a waitress refilling ketchup. Bottles. His phone buzzed. "Mom." "Where are you? You missed breakfast." He silenced it. The bell jingled as he stepped inside. No pregnant woman, just an elderly white man in a booth, his face buried in a newspaper. Jamal hesitated, then slid into the opposite seat. The man lowered the paper, revealing sharp blue eyes and a scar cutting through his stubble. "You the kid from the train," he grunted. Jamal's throat tightened. "Who are you?" The man slid a photo across the table. Jamal's blood turned to ice. It was her, the pregnant woman. Her face gaunt, eyes wide with terror, standing outside a brick building he recognized. The old meatpacking warehouse near his school. "Her name's Claire," the man said. "She's my daughter, and if you want her to stay alive, you'll tell me exactly what she gave you." Evelyn's kitchen smelled of burnt coffee and paranoia. The cops had taken reports, shrugged off her claims about the hooded man. "Probably just a creep, ma'am. We'll patrol the area." But Duke paced restlessly, his nails clicking the linoleum. She scrolled through her phone, zooming in on the blurry photo she'd snapped as the man fled. On his wrist, a tattoo. A serpent coiled around a dagger. She'd seen that symbol before. Her oldest son, Marcus, a cop in Atlanta, picked up on the first ring. "Ma, you okay?" "Baby," she whispered. "You ever hear of a snake and knife tattoo?" A beat. Then Marcus's voice dropped. "Where'd you see that?" "On a man who tried to rob me." "Why?" "Stay inside. Don't talk to anyone. I'm catching the next flight." The line went dead. Outside, a car engine growled to life. Duke's bark shattered the silence, a sound Evelyn hadn't heard since the day he retired, the day his partner died. Jamal stared at the man's scar. "She didn't give me anything," he lied. The note felt like a brick in his pocket. The man leaned closer. "Don't play hero, kid. There are people looking for what she stole, and now they're looking for you." Across the diner, the trucker stood, tossing cash on the counter. For a split second, his jacket gaped open, revealing a glint of metal. Not a gun, a badge. Jamal's pulse spiked. "Cop?" But the man in the booth followed his gaze and stiffened. "We're done here," he hissed, snatching the photo. "Tell Claire, her dad's not the only one searching." He vanished out the back door. Jamal sat frozen, the waitress's chatter suddenly too loud, the coffee scent too sharp. The trucker ambled past, dropping a napkin on the table. Scrawled in grease, "Run." Some secrets are grenades, some kindnesses are traps. And as the sun climbed over Brooklyn, Evelyn's phone buzzed with Marcus's text. "They're not after your purse, Ma, they're after Duke." And in the diner parking lot, Jamal ran, straight into the path of the black sedan. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she gripped the phone, Marcus's text glaring back at her. "They're after Duke." The words didn't make sense. Her big, goofy shadow who snored through Wheel of Fortune and licked peanut butter off spoons. Why would anyone want him? But the memory of that hooded man's cold stare, the way he'd studied Duke like a prize, sent a shiver down her spine. She knelt beside the dog, scratching behind his ears the way he liked. "What did you get us into, huh?" Duke whined, pressing his head into her palm. Outside, tires screeched. Both their heads snapped toward the window. Jamal's sneakers slapped the pavement as he ducked behind a dumpster, the black sedan crawling past. His lungs burned. Why me? The note in his pocket felt radioactive. He'd memorized the number, the smudged words. "They're watching." He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Claire's number again. What if she answered this time? What if they did? A garbage truck roared by, and he seized the noise to make the call. It rang once before a male voice snarled, "Stop digging, kid." The line died. Jamal's blood turned to ice. They had her phone. They had her. Across town, the pregnant woman, Claire, crouched in a storage unit, her breath shallow. The ultrasound photo in her hand trembled. 20 weeks. She'd been so careful, covering her tracks, leaving crumbs only for someone kind enough to follow. Someone like Jamal. But the men in the sedan had found her first apartment. Found her mom. She pressed a hand to her swollen belly, tears cutting hot trails down her cheeks. The USB drive hidden in her shoe seemed to pulse, evidence of what they'd done. The deals, the payoffs, the badges involved. If Jamal hadn't taken that note, Marcus's flight touched down at JFK just after noon. He hadn't slept, his mind replaying the files he'd pulled before leaving Atlanta. The serpent and dagger symbol wasn't just a gang tattoo. It was a marker for something darker, a network of dirty cops and hired guns, their roots tangled in drug busts gone wrong, evidence lockers mysteriously emptied. And now they were circling his mother. His text to her went unanswered. The Uber driver side-eyed him as he barked, "Faster," when he reached her block. The street was too quiet. No kids playing stickball. No Mrs. Ruiz yelling at her chihuahua. Just a stray cat darting under a car. He sprinted up the stoop, pounding on her door. "Ma, it's me!" The lock clicked. Evelyn stood there, shotgun in hand, Duke bristling, at her side. Her face softened for a split second before hardening again. "You followed," she demanded, peering past him. "Clean, far as I can tell," Marcus said, stepping inside. The living room reeked of bleach and fear. Boards nailed over the windows, Duke's food bowl upturned. What happened? Evelyn nodded to the kitchen table. A manila envelope lay slit open, photos spilling out. Duke, younger, in a K9 vest. Officer Ramirez, his handler, grinning beside him. And a newspaper clipping. NYPD K9 unit disbanded after fatal raid gone wrong. Marcus's stomach churned. Ramirez, wasn't he killed? Evelyn cut in. They said it was a drug gang hit, but Duke took 2 bullets protecting him. They retired him straight after. She picked up a photo of Ramirez's funeral, rows of cops, hats over hearts. One man lingered at the back, sleeve rolled up. A serpent. A dagger. He was there, she whispered. They've been waiting all this time. Jamal zigzagged through back alleys, his mind racing. The diner, the scarred man, the trucker's warning. He needed help, but who'd believe him? His teacher, Mr. Alvarez? No, too risky. His mom would panic. Keisha? She was 12. Then he remembered the community center. Ms. Pat, the director who'd helped him after the school suspension. She didn't flinch at messy stories. He burst through the center's doors, startling a group of kids painting posters. Ms. Pat looked up from her desk, her gold hoops catching the light. Jamal, you look like you've seen a ghost. He spilled. It all, the train, the note, the sedan, the photo of Claire. Ms. Pat listened, her frown deepening. When he finished, she opened her bottom drawer, pulling out a file. 2 weeks ago, a girl came here, pregnant, scared, asked about safe housing. She slid an intake form across the desk. Claire's name, fake address, and in the margin scribbled, "They're in the system." What system? Jamal asked. Ms. Pat hesitated. Child services? Police? She wouldn't say. But she left something. She handed Jamal a sticky note with a website address. Told me to give it to the boy from the train if he came. The computer lab was empty. Jamal typed the URL, hands shaking. The screen flashed. Access denied. Then a password prompt. He tried Claire's name. Nothing. The date from the note? Error. On a whim, he typed the number she'd given him. The screen blinked. Welcome, Officer Ramirez. Evelyn's landline rang sharp and sudden. She grabbed it. Hello? Static. Then a distorted voice. You've got something that belongs to us, Mrs. Carter. Give up the dog, and the boy lives. What boy? She snapped, but the line went dead. Marcus stared at her. What boy? Duke let out a low growl, pacing toward the basement door. Something thumped below. Jamal's breath caught as the website loaded. A decades-old NYPD server, case files, incident reports, and a video labeled Raid 12 to 15. He clicked play. Grainy footage of a warehouse, cops swarming, gunfire, screams. A German Shepherd Duke dragging a wounded officer into an alley. Ramirez. The camera zoomed in on a cop standing back, watching. He rolled up his sleeve, adjusting his watch. The serpent and dagger, a chat box popped up on the screen. User 123. You shouldn't be here. Jamal typed, Who is this? User 123. Claire, they're coming for you. The diner, it's a trap. Before he could respond, the community center's lights flickered. A crash echoed from the lobby. Ms. Pat shouted, Run, Jamal, now! Under Evelyn's house, the basement door creaked open. A figure climbed the stairs humming.